Um,
Oh my God, I'm so
oh
sorry.
my
I
goodness,
actually, think I
that's
am
okay.
just now starting the recording.
Do you want to start over?
Yes.
Okay, go
Sorry.
ahead. That's okay.
Okay. Hi everyone. So second time is the apparently the charm. Um, Welcome to the Informed Forum. I am with Kristin Seale, and I will let her introduce herself. So why don't you go ahead?
Sure. I'm Kristin Seale. I'm a candidate for the 168th House District in Pennsylvania. I apologize that my voice is a little funny this morning. We had a campaign meet and greet last night, and I might have been laughing too much, too loud, and now I've got a little bit of a rasp happening. Um, I am leadership of a nonprofit organization in Center City, Philadelphia. I currently sit on the Rose Tree Media School Board as a school director, and I am really proud and excited to be working to serve the 168th.
That's awesome. So I guess so. I am a progressive. What does being progressive mean to you?
Being progressive, first and foremost, to me, means really standing on principle, really standing up for the things that you believe in, and being outspoken and not mincing words. I've been fortunate to be trained twice now, 2 years in a row, by the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. And I think the interesting experience that we've had both times is you get into this room with people from all over the United States, on continent and off, and it's like a collective letting down of the shoulders. Everyone sort of has a deep breath and an exhale, and delights in being in a room full of people that understand you, where you don't have to mince words or explain yourself. And so I think that we find that in our local communities, there's a wide spectrum of Democrats and Republicans and independents and all sorts of different folks. I think that we find ourselves explaining ourselves quite a bit to people that more often than not are used to folks equivocating or being sort of centrist. And so some people respect that you stand for what you stand for and believe in what you believe in. And I think that in a lot of other cases, folks are shocked or scandalized or unsure why you need to be so vocal about what it is that you believe. Couldn't you just be a bit quieter? And
Right.
so I think progressive means having a strongly held set of beliefs that you act on. And for me also, I think that it means a different type of solidarity with your community. I have found personally in my experience that progressives are less party allegiant and more servant leadership for their community. So the progressives that I know are folks that really intend to serve everyone in their community, not just the party that they're affiliated with. And they're interested in changing government and having an impact on the community, not just flipping seats to one party allegiance.
Right. And I really couldn't agree with you more, actually, just because, I mean, even speaking for myself, like, I'm a progressive, but I've actually voted for Republicans before. I've voted for Green Party people before. I've voted for, I guess, if you want to call Bernie Sanders an independent, I voted for an independent before. I mean, so because I think what you're saying, at least what I understand right now about even the political sphere, and just maybe not locally so much. And I live in PA-5, but that's a whole nother thing. But what I understand is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party aren't exactly appealing to the real ideas of what it means to be a Democrat and a Republican. What they're, in a sense, appealing to is their donors. And as a
I
result,
think
you
that
kind
makes a
of
lot of sense.
like, what was that?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And in a sense, what they're appealing to is just their donors, and they're leaving the working class behind. So I like what I'm hearing from you, because a lot of people like seem to be so frustrated, because I think to me, like, your platform, or at least what you just said to me, shows me that you're gonna knock on every door if you were to win the primary.
Absolutely. And I'm in a really interesting geographic location. My immediate district in Media Borough in Pennsylvania is a place where it is genuinely true that if you were not registered Republican, you could not hold a job in the courthouse. Media is the county seat of Delaware County, and so the county courthouse is here in town. There are a lot of people that live in town that work in that courthouse, and so there are a great deal of people in this community who are registered R but vote Dem, or registered R and vote otherwise. And when I was circulating petitions this year, I met quite a number of people that are really turning this interesting corner that would say, you know what, I've been registered Republican for years, and I've been meaning to switch my registration to Democrat, and I'm going to do that before the primary. So I think that some of last year's victories might have shaken things up a little bit, but I think that the wider political landscape nationally too is really changing that dynamic. So even last year when I was running for school board, I did have to knock every door, at least in my 1 square mile town, because you actually can't tell by someone's registration what their real affiliation is in this town.
No, you can't. And I mean, I'm saying that as someone that ran for judge of elections in my precinct. I didn't win, but I ran. And
right. Good for you. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. And I think if I were to like say like the reason I didn't win, I mean, there's a handful of reasons, but I think the primary one is that PA-5 was previously PA-7 and was gerrymandered to favor Republicans. Now it's a blue district, but it's safer, which I don't like either. But either way, it's more fair because the lines are evenly distributed throughout the state. But I don't know. It's just so I guess other questions I would have. How do you feel? So I think a lot of people across the spectrum agree that money in politics is a huge problem. How do you feel about that exactly, and how are you showing how you feel about that?
Sure. So I would love to live in a world where we get rid of money in politics, and citizens united and have publicly funded elections. I personally have signed a number of pledges as a candidate this cycle, including the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. I do not accept funds from any kind of fossil fuel extraction funding. I don't accept funding from what people call sometimes corporate PACs. We are not supported by a super PAC, although I would find it hard to imagine like what super PAC would be interested in this race. This is during this particular cycle, at least for the primary, sort of we are all the neglected children in the family, because the CD5 race is really sort of prime time in everyone's mind. Intrigue around what a lot of us have been affectionately calling it the clown car for the fifth. It's like you open the door to the car and more candidates are just piling out, and you don't know how they've fit them all in there. But they're down to 10 now, but that's still really upstaged any other state level race. And of course, they've got the beautifully new drawn district, but the rest of us that are running at the state level we're still battling it out in our gerrymandered district. So I think that it'll take getting past the primary for a wider audience or larger organizations to really focus on our state level races. At the same time, there's some really interesting national progressive organizations that are getting involved in state level races for the first time and starting to understand the importance of investing at that level if we're going to protect state houses across the country. So I think that there could be attention and opportunity for some unsavory funding down the road. And I've made a firm commitment to run a more grassroots campaign that is small money donor funded, that is progressive organization funded more than anything else.
That's awesome. And honestly, you answered my question perfectly. Super PACs need to go. For me, I'm sort of okay with super PACs when it comes to unions, sort of. I don't feel one way or another because they're at least supporting something that's good. Supposedly. I'd have to look more into that.
And I think, you have to play by the rules of the game, right? And so I am a former labor myself, former union labor myself, and I'm a huge defender of working families and a huge proponent of organized labor. So for me, organized labor is doing what they have to do to compete and protect working families. And these are the ground rules right now. One of the ways that Citizens United harms us is by drowning out collective voices of working people. So I definitely believe in organized labor being able to have as much of a voice in elections as corporations.
That's awesome, because they suck. And I even found things out in the last 20 hours about even the PA-5 race that are absolutely infuriating me. And it's just, people are silent on it. Like it doesn't even matter. But it does. And I feel like I'm living in George Orwell's 1984 a little bit.
I could see that.
Movie, oh my God, it was something with virtual reality and a video game. Something or other, I forget what it was. But that movie, whatever it was, it really feels like we're kind of living in that. Because it's hard, it's really hard now to get to the facts. And I'm saying this as a librarian.
You are someone who is good at resources and information and cares about those things. And still, it's interesting too, because I wonder at this point, we are now today 9 days out from the primary in Pennsylvania. I think some of the silence that you're witnessing might be preoccupation and exhaustion on the part of a lot of people. I think we get to a point in campaigns in the cycle where, everybody's just got to sort of bear down and grind out the hard work at the last week or so, and loses steam for anything extraneous to the win.
Part of me thinks you're right, because this whole last couple of years has been an utter shit show, pardon my French. But
no, I couldn't agree more.
It's just been an utter shit show. And I'm not talking just even about the man who may not be named, because I am not saying his name.
Me either. But we know who we're talking about.
I'm even talking about just the basics of everything. But I actually wanted to get back to something that you talked about, because I don't understand it, and I think actually a lot of people don't understand it. So can you talk about the House congressional, the House lines or something like that? Because I don't understand how that happens. I think anyway, my state senator is Dalen Leach.
Okay.
But I just, all that information is confusing to me.
Sure. So the state House and Senate districts, I think that they were drawn last in 2012, and they are just as gerrymandered as the congressional districts. There's actually been something interesting going on in the House for the last couple of years, and Senate in Pennsylvania, where there are rules around when and how certain things can come up for a vote. So we have the second largest state legislature in the United States. We're one of the last remaining legislatures where that's someone's actual full-time paid job. And there's been a movement for the last couple of years to try to reduce the size of our legislature and change the district boundaries. Not even related necessarily to gerrymandering, although folks that work on gerrymandering have been party to this as well. So in order to bring that to a vote and do work on that for 2 consecutive session years, the entire body has to vote on it. So they voted that through last year. I am unsure on whether or not, I think somebody brought the bill, but I don't think it's necessarily been voted through this year. But there's a chance that next year we could be voting on whether or not to reduce or consolidate or redraw districts in an effort to shrink the size of the legislature. If that comes to pass, I think you're going to see a lot more lively discussion in public and in news about what the ramifications of that and the implications of that would be, and ways that that could be used to benefit people in the Commonwealth or used to further benefit the folks in power.
Right.
And frankly, to disenfranchise some people. If that effort is not done scrupulously, carefully, and academically, there are a lot more people. There are people that have been left behind by our gerrymandered districts. There are a lot more people that could be left behind if that is not done well.
That is really great.
Well, it just sort of underlines the importance of state level politics, I think, in an administration that is as much of a cluster and as chaotic as what's happening at the federal level. At the state level, we are fighting all of the same battles that you hear about in Congress, because conservatives have had a coordinated plan for a couple of decades now to legislate at the local and state level at the same time that they are employing strategies at the federal level. And they're sometimes a lot more successful at the state level. So for me, during what I feel like will be a little bit of an intractable administration, I think that the real fights are at the state level. And I think that the place that we have hope of getting things done or blocking some momentum for really ugly things that don't benefit the voters and the citizens of the Commonwealth, I think that where we get that done is in state legislatures right now.
A part of me is tending to agree with you, at least just because, the Republicans right now have a majority, as far as I understand it. I think in the House, no, you know what? I'm honestly not sure. But
there's a super majority.
Okay, yeah.
I thought that. Right. Yeah, if they send something to the governor's desk and they've got the right number of votes whipped, if the governor vetoes something, in some cases, depending on what the bill is, if it's got enough support, they can overturn the governor's veto.
Right. Okay. That's
a dangerous situation to be in.
Yeah, that's again great, like Tony the Tiger.
The good news is on either side of the aisle, there are more women running for state legislative seats this year than ever before in history. So I don't know if you remember back in 2016, that sort of disgust that we all felt when we learned that I think it was 91 or 92 state legislative seats in the House and Senate went completely unchallenged in 2016. And of course, the majority of those were Republican held.
Right.
There are more than 90 women alone, both Dem, Republican, and otherwise, running for seats this year. And I think that there's just a little over a handful of seats that are going unchallenged. I'm pretty sure that the party managed to do a really good job of finding candidates for just about every seat out there so that doesn't happen again in 2018.
That's great. Like, I like that I like that women are running in all parties, because I'm the kind of person that really doesn't subscribe to one party or the other. I think it really comes down to more to like ideology and what the person stands for. And fundamentally, my number one issue, which we already spoke about, is just money.
Right.
And if they're taking money from a super PAC, and who's connected to that super PAC, and all the little intricacies. So, like, for instance, for me, like, there are certain people, unfortunately, and I'm saying this just because there are people that I can't support if they are to win the PA-5 primary for Congress. And I can't, and I won't support them. That's for better or worse, but in my mind, the Democratic Party needs to learn that we're not fucking around.
And I think that is absolutely well said. The party has got to recognize, whether they agree with it or not, whether they like it or not, they've got to sleep in the bed that they've made. If they have not managed to capture the allegiance of young people, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
If they have not managed to capture the loyalty of progressives, there's a reason for that. And they cannot exclude people on the one hand and then be angry when those same people won't just fall in line with whatever the results of this are.
Right. Like, something that kind of like comes to mind, just to talk about the never-ending conversation of the 2016 campaign or whatever election. Which, are we ever going to stop talking about that? I mean, honestly, ever. But it makes me think of when Obama said, "Don't boo, vote."
Yeah.
Because, all right, on some level, I agree with him. Yes, we need to vote. But I think he was saying vote for people he wants you to vote for. The Bidens, the Clintons, the Lunkenheimers, the Mary Gay Scanlons, the Margot Davidsons, etc. And I'm not saying those names necessarily to like hamper on their character per se, so much as where they stand and things that I know about them and what is behind them. So
we've done a lot of there's been a lot of co-opting of the word progressive this cycle. So words have meaning, and there are candidates that are and are not progressive.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I might as well put her in here. Like, for me, like, that's why, like, I, for one thing, really like what I'm hearing from you. I want to talk more though about where you stand, but I want to actually also put in, like, that's why for me, like, I can vote I could vote for a few people if they were to run the primary. My candidate is Molly Sheehan, but I'm hoping a progressive wins who's not taking PAC money, because that's the biggest issue to me. Because at least then we can trust them to be more progressive. Like
yeah, and I think there's a wide range of issues that matter to voters. A party that is grappling with and wrestling with and really trying to address the larger issues that are important to working people and people that are struggling, not just the most comfortable among us out here in the Philadelphia suburbs.
Right.
I think that we are in some ways failing at really acknowledging what people are facing in their everyday lives, how informed people are, and what people really care about, what is important to them, what's the sort of dividing line, what is their hill to die on in these elections.
Right.
And for some people that's money in politics, and for some people that is justice reform, and for some
Right.
people it's along gender lines, or it's about
because I think it doesn't get enough. Doesn't get talked about enough.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Oh.
And it's been really interesting to watch the framing of that as things outside of the control of these races in the congressional district, tragedies around gun violence started to really punctuate all of the debates and forums because of what's happening in the country, not necessarily because of local issues. So I think it's interesting to watch the way that has informed the process, and at least on one particular issue, forced candidates to have to really speak about and really define their stance on common sense gun laws,
right,
and gun violence in this country. So I wonder too if there's that sort of outside influence from national tragedy. I wish that in some ways we, the local electorate, were better able to shape their discussions on issues that we care about.
I agree with you, and I mean I'm not even entirely sure where I fully stand on the gun issue myself. I've never held a gun. I've never wanted really to hold a gun, but I don't think that we need assault rifles available. I mean, in my mind, we need better background checks, and just kind of to close the gun show loophole, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's a fucking problem. But I don't know. But so I want to talk about a couple of other things specifically that have just come up, mostly because of the infamous man Bernie Sanders, who many would say really is by and large responsible for this national, local, statewide movement of people like me, hypothetically, who are introverts and are trying to step outside of themselves a little bit and get involved because they're forced to, frankly.
Sure.
But so people are talking about, so one thing I see, at least in the congressional race, is people are saying that they're for single payer healthcare, but it doesn't really seem like all of them would really be able to accomplish it. So I guess a question that I have is, what at the state level could you do to see single payer healthcare come to pass, say in PA?
Sure. So I have a very lengthy, very wonky answer to that question. If you Google my name and Google DSA, I answered that question at great detailed length in my Democratic Socialists of America Philly endorsement questionnaire. What I will say is that we have both state level and federal level structures in place that would absolutely make it easy and efficient for us to make the transition to that system. It's all about strategy and, of course, political will, we are really starting to gain ground on the political will piece in that legislature. And so I think a well-coordinated strategy that involves folks inside the legislative body building a coalition and folks like DSA and other organizations that really understand Medicare for all and really know how to go out to voters and help them understand how that works and why it would benefit them, including the most important piece of any transition, which would be comprehensive job retraining and benefits for anyone in the current healthcare system that would be displaced by that transition, making sure that we're bringing them into any kind of a new system that has different drivers than the current profit motives that are at play right now. I think that folks that really care about universal health care are folks that care about working people and that would not want anyone in our current healthcare system to suffer because we tried to make the system fairer and offer more people better coverage. So there are ways to use existing systems, existing laws, and existing benefits to make this happen. It is not a small undertaking, but it can be done. And I think that the folks that you need to look to for that kind of leadership are people like myself that have experience in public health and poverty law, people that understand how to bring different kinds of people together to sort of meet people where they are and find out what their interests, what their concerns are, and address those while bringing them together around something that is really good for us all. That really, they say that rising tide lifts all boats. If there is one thing that could help alleviate poverty, that could help boost our economy, it is taking care of the health of every person in this Commonwealth and making sure that everyone's health and lives are protected, that people have the opportunity to reach their full potential because they aren't sidelined by medical needs, whether that is, from a physical, personal perspective or from a cost perspective. So I think there's a lot to be done. I think that there are some bills that are in the House and Senate right now that could be improved, and that we could, by improving them, build more political will to move them forward and take those first steps towards a fair system.
Right. And I actually really like that answer. I have to completely admit that I don't understand necessarily everything politically related. I'm still just learning myself. But I think that what you said is a very good answer. And I'd have to look more into the bills that you mentioned, just because for me, I mean, as I mentioned, I think before we were on the call, I am in grad school. I'm in my last quarter. So like, I'm trying to do all this shit and it's just like, But
there's so much to know and so much to learn, but people like you keep those resources free and available for everyone to be lifelong learners. So what you're doing is really important. Focus in on that, because you are the key to other people being able to discover everything that they don't know about.
Yeah, and that's the thing, just getting people to like know the information. But like you mentioned, so I actually want to talk about like Russia. Not because I believe in it, I think it's a hoax. I think it's complete and utter bullshit. Outside of that one, or like what, like there's 3 memes that were like Bernie memes and whatnot. But what is your how do you communicate with people who, like for me, like I watch independent media. That's what I watch. I can't even honestly tell you the last time I watched CNN or MSNBC. unless it was inadvertently at the gym at Planet Fitness at 4 a.m. So, how how do you communicate with people who are kind of stuck in who have all the facts and information? Like if I guess what I'm asking is if some kind of question comes up about Russia or something that you have a very strong opinion on,
Mm-hmm.
how do you get your opinion across in a way that's not going to keep them from voting for you?
Interesting. Um, sorry, I apologize.
It's totally fine.
having such a hard time having a voice somewhere between allergies and having
Oh my
having
gosh,
laughed a little bit too much.
I totally understand. I mean, I love this time of year. My body and mind just come awake this time of year. But I have asthma.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to everything outside too. So I completely.
Oh no. And it's a little bit the hazard of campaigning right now too, because where I live, everyone's porches are like covered in a fine yellow mist of pollen right now, and all I'm doing with all of my free time is like knocking people's doors and breathing it in. So
Yeah.
it's wearing on me. But
Yeah.
I so interestingly enough, I think that that kind of communicating for me starts with listening. So I never want to insult someone's intelligence or assume that I know what they know. So I think for me, um, that kind of communicating starts with finding out what someone does know and what they want to know, or what matters to them, and then taking the conversation from there. I try to understand where someone is, either in their knowledge or in their firmly held beliefs, before I share mine. And I try to share mine respectfully. Um, I don't change my message to suit an audience. And again, that's one of the things that I think really defines who progressives are. We're people that hold our beliefs, and we're loud and clear about what it is that we believe. So um, I try not to mince words too much, but I'm also not trying to deliver those words with a sledgehammer. I'm trying to um, bring my message in a way that can be received. So I really do think that starts with finding out where someone else stands, finding out what they care about and what's important to them. I'll give you an example. I am a really firm believer in our right to organize and organize labor. And so the majority of fire departments in our county are volunteer fire departments and not union fire departments. And I knocked a door last week where one of the first questions the person at the door asked me was, "Where do you stand on union firefighters?" And I said, "Well, look, I've heard from a lot of people that they aren't really impressed with the very few organizations around Delaware County that have organized firefighters. But I'm someone that believes that our first responders, more than anyone, deserve to have a living wage and good benefits when they're putting their physical selves at risk for all of the rest of us every day." And he said, "Oh, good, because I'm a union firefighter." And I said, "That's fantastic. Let me talk to you about how, we could be helping more of your brothers that aren't fortunate to have an organization that's taking care of them." But it's, so I entered that conversation trying to respect that lots of other people have told me in this county that they don't believe that those unions are necessary. So I tiptoed into that conversation a little bit, but was still firm about the fact that fundamentally, I believe, regardless of where you fall on volunteer firefighter or union firefighter, that you as a firefighter put your life at risk every day and therefore deserve good compensation and good benefits.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't have, I like unions. I mean, unions, I think this is correct information. Don't quote me on this. But, and I'm saying that ironically because we're actually being recorded by me. So I hope I don't have misinformation or alternative facts or fake news. But I think unions are essentially the reason we have a 5-day work week.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I was right, but I just wanted to like make sure.
Yeah, and that's you know, that happened at a point in history. The thing that people often forget, because I think in part maybe because of the way that we teach labor history, is that battle never stopped. The fight for workers' rights is ongoing, and there are very well-moneyed interests that have good reasons to continue to try to erode those rights and protections. And so, you know, without organized labor, you don't have things like OSHA, which offers federally worker protections for safety and standards for inspection and ensuring that, you know, folks in different professions can work in a safe workplace. There are many, many insidious ways at many levels of government that corporate interests are trying to erode workers' rights, and the front line of that battle is always held and fought by organized labor. So there are some historic wins that I think everyone is familiar with. I think that one thing that people do learn in school is about the Triangle Fire, and a point in time when workers could be locked in a room and even in some cases locked to their workstations. And there was a massive tragedy where people were trapped in a building and died in what was essentially a sweatshop. And the protest that was born of that tragedy is actually part of what's responsible for a lot of modern day worker protections. So those rights in a number of cases come from battles where lives of workers were actually lost before we won those rights. And those rights were never given to us. They were pried out of the grip of the wealthy. So it came with a lot of loss that we have some of these protections. And I don't think that I feel like college, maybe undergraduate, is where anyone learns about the Triangle Fire. I can't remember learning about that in high school, but maybe
I don't remember learning about
still
that
in curriculum.
Maybe I did. It's just I was
there's a pretty good documentary about it that you can find online, and it's shocking. So when you look back at labor history, these are all very real battles that they're fought sometimes with a human cost in order for us to enjoy some of the worker protections and some of the rights that we have today. And that fight is still going on at every level, especially in the Pennsylvania state legislature. There are battles over what they call the carefully and strategically named right to work movement.
Right.
Is all about eroding union protections. So when we erode union protections, we erode non-union worker protections. All non-union worker protections come from organized labor.
Okay, yeah, I hear that term, and to be honest, I haven't had a moment to really look it up, but I find it just confusing because it doesn't mean what it means.
That's right. It means the exact opposite of what it means. Right to work states are essentially states that have declared that they are not going to honor certain federal worker protections or even, previous state level worker protections. So It's something that benefits the employer and not the worker, and makes it extremely difficult for workers to enjoy what protections and safety is due them in most of the states in this country.
Right. Right.
And these organized attacks on union labor have been really effective. Union membership right now is at an all-time low. These efforts from big corporate employers and industry lobbies to do things like in Pennsylvania, there's an effort to make sure that public sector union workers that work for government can't have a voice by contributing directly from their paycheck to their union's political action committee.
Right.
So in a world where we've decided corporations are people and are allowed to have a voice in elections, we're at the same time deciding that organized labor that works for government can't have that voice.
Things are so messed
That's just a little bit of the delight of right to work laws.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like utter bull.
Yeah. And that's, like they do on many different fronts, you see this sort of tactic in all of these different super specific abortion related bills that come to a state legislature. They're just attacking on all fronts. They're finding any little piece that they can chip away at to remove this piece of ways that unions can build power amongst workers. One little piece at a time, they're trying to erode the power of organized labor.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh my God, like some of this stuff, like you can't make this stuff up, and it's like you try to keep it in check in your mind, and then you get like really angry one day, and it's like you're crying the next. At least that's me. But
it's important to feel all those feelings and then keep moving. It's part of it. It's for sure part of it. One of the things that I talk to people about a lot is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I've discovered that I have the intestinal fortitude for it. And not everyone does. And I don't want this to be an exclusive club where only the people that have enough wealth to protect them from the worst parts of it, or enough intestinal fortitude to gut this out and actually get through a campaign and do the work that is so hard. We need, if we are able to do this work, we have got to pave a better path so that people that may not have that kind of strength are also able to be contributors. The makeup of our government should reflect us. And that means that, people that are vulnerable should be in our government. People that don't have that kind of will or, sort of like iron guts to stand up to those pressures or speak truth to power. Not everyone has that strength or those skills. And because I do, I'm going to try to use that in service of people that maybe don't have that skill set, and hope that if we can get enough of us into government, that there will be an option for other people, other kinds of people, to also take a seat at the table.
Right. Yeah. I hope so. I hope so hard, because it's scary. Like I think I saw an article somewhere, and I have to admit I don't subscribe to the Washington Post or New York Times. Something tells me I sort of should. Then other times I'm like, yeah, no. But I think I saw an article somewhere. Maybe it was even The Intercept. I don't know. But something about maybe Generation Z and millennials not relating to the top two parties, or even relating to, like, I think maybe I saw Republicans somewhere. And,
yeah, I am trying to remember what this article was. It's ringing a bell for me too. And it said, I can't remember who published it, but it said something like they did a poll, and the majority of Gen Z and millennials said that they don't really believe in one party or the other, but that they think that Republicans are really fiscally responsible and best capable of handling our economy.
I'm pulling it up now. I just did like a little Google search, or actually a DuckDuckGo search, because DuckDuckGo is more secure than Google, though Google has better searching optimizations. But I'm at hispanicheritage.com. It's not gonna load for me, whatever. My computer's being slow, but at least from the basic, that's like, if you like, if you do like a search on in a search engine, you see like the basic results and you see like the highlights of the article. Like,
yeah.
it seems that, well, this one that I'm seeing, if it will let me in, it's letting me in, yay, okay. But like it's saying 50K Gen Z students identify as Republican. Yeah. So that's well, actually that's old, but that's from October 27, 2016. But I know there was a recent article. I don't know where.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I feel like the more I think about it, the more I feel like I heard it maybe as like a WHYY story when I was getting ready for work earlier this week. But there was some kind of a poll that said that that younger folks are not feeling allegiant to or affiliating with either party, but that they have specific opinions about which party is good at what, and that they highlighted that the majority of the folks polled felt like Republicans are better at handling the economy or more fiscally responsible or something along those lines. And I found that really interesting.
That is interesting because neither party is really fiscally responsible.
Right. Yeah, the frame of that is interesting. Like, I don't know what we're calling, words have meaning, and I don't know what we're calling responsible. That's true. And it's, I appreciate fresh eyes on things. So yeah. I would definitely be curious to know what it is that they're seeing and what they feel like responsibility is, and, what is sound fiscal policy, or what is a good, strong economy to the folks that were interviewed. Because I think that for me personally, we get to a certain age and start to think that we're accumulating knowledge. And I've seen lots of my peers and lots of people older than me start to take your years of experience and all of your learned knowledge and feel like that means that you have achieved a level of knowing something. And I personally, I'm a Buddhist, and sort of part of our practice as Buddhists is to come to everything fresh from a place of not knowing. Yeah. And I think that offers a really different perspective in life. And so I like to think that I'm a perpetual student, and I've got a lot to learn, and I feel like we especially have a lot to learn from younger people. I'm really heartened and on a lot of days lifted up by what I see people in their early and mid-20s around me accomplishing, and their viewpoint and perspective on things is not just fresh, it's insightful and it's interesting. I still have a teenager at home, so I still have teenagers around the house, and sometimes I find that the 8th graders in my house have more perspective than the septuagenarians in my life. So I think that I would not dismiss out of hand whatever it is that the majority of people in this poll are getting at. I would like to hear more about why it is that they don't feel party allegiant, but do feel Republicans are responsible. If that's what I said.
I think that may have been what it said. I have to find it somewhere. I mean, I have a lovely assignment due at midnight tonight relating to XSLT and XML transformations. So that will be my day. But
well, and I should probably scoot in a minute or two because I have got a meeting coming up in about half an hour.
All right. Well,
is there anything else that we didn't get to that you were interested in?
Let me think. Quick note on where you feel on sex work and universal basic income and a job plan.
Sure. So I am a huge proponent of universal basic income. I think it could be the solution to a lot of economic failures in this country. I am part of the new revived Poor People's Campaign. When I lived in New Mexico before I moved to Pennsylvania, I worked at the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty. And I think one of the biggest crimes in this country, one of the biggest hate crimes that we perpetuate on Americans, is not adequately ever addressing poverty. And I think that it is not just a social ill, but it's a big part of why America isn't working. And I don't mean that, that's no pun intended. There are people that cannot and should not work in this country, and they have rights, and they have a right to live a fulfilling life and reach their own potential and live a life of dignity. So I would love to implement a basic universal income. I also, again, big proponent of organized labor. One of the most interesting and my favorite people that I got to meet at the Progressive Change Campaign Committee candidate training this year is somebody that works for an SEIU in another state that is part of organizing sex workers in her state. And that movement started, I think, in the 1990s. The first organized, unionized group of sex workers, I think, was dancers at a strip club in San Francisco. And I'm pretty sure there's a documentary about them becoming the first organized labor in that industry. I think that they've got a right to organize, that sex workers have a right to organize just like anyone else does. I used to work volunteering for an organization in Albuquerque called Safer Sex Work, which was an organization that provided healthcare resources as well as all sorts of other basic needs to women in one neighborhood in Albuquerque who were sex workers. And so we provided things like tampons and pads and food and healthcare checks. There was a needle exchange. There was, a whole bunch of different community groups would come together and provide resources a couple times a week in one grocery store parking lot that was accommodating. And one of the ways that became a really interesting and influential program in the city is that they also brought local law enforcement into relationship with this, where once we had built a trust relationship with the sex workers in the neighborhood, and they understood that we were not going to harm them or do things that accidentally cause them harm, we were able to create a Bad John's list. So they were actively reporting people that they had had bad experiences with. And then we were sharing that information with law enforcement, and law enforcement was actually interested in working with them to protect them in the community. So I have been personally involved in supporting the work of women who find themselves in that profession in a way that, we were able to sort of meet them where they are and try to provide assistance that they actually needed, informed by them. And so that's not necessarily the situation that all sex workers find themselves in, but I believe that we all have human needs, and that we should be taking care of each other. So that's just one way that I have personally done some volunteer work to try to be supportive of some women that are struggling in a profession where they are not very safe.
That's, awesome. But I don't want to keep you any longer. I'm sure you have to get to your event.
I do. Thanks for making time for this. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And hopefully one of these days I will actually be able to canvas for you, considering you're in media, which is about half an hour from me. And
yeah. You're welcome anytime. We always appreciate the help.
Yeah. Is media part of PA-5?
It is. Yeah. We are solidly a nice big chunk of CD5.
Okay. Well, I can actually kill two birds with one stone then.
Absolutely.
So
you're welcome anytime.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day, and thank you. And thank you to anyone who will be listening, because it's not live yet on anywhere outside of being recorded now. But this was the Informed Forum with Carly Seale and Kristin Seale, and she is running, tell me if I get this wrong, it's still confusing to me. She's running for the House of Representatives in PA's 168th, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's totally correct.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Make sure. All right. Thanks.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.